Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
As we record this, we're about mid-November.
Yes.
Kind of like
right towards those holidays.
For us, like the last week that we would be sending in any inventory with any realistic expectations that it would sell before Christmas.
Yeah, and there are some deadlines that you need to meet depending on if you want, Black Friday.
Sure.
Yeah, and you can find that in Seller Central.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to hear, what have you been hearing lately, Brian? What are you talking about a lot of lately?
So, well, let's talk about some of what I've been getting in my coaching sessions, and then maybe if we've got time, we can dive into what's been happening in some of yours.
Okay.
Or at least get your feedback on, because that's what you're good at. What you should have said was this.
Yes, I'm very good at that.
Uh-huh.
Hindsight's 2020, right?
Uh-huh.
Really good at knowing what I should have said.
No, for me, you're like, oh, you should have said this.
Yeah. Well, it's a talent of mine.
Yes.
I can't help it.
Well, it's always easier to do it for somebody else than it is for yourself, right? Or to see it for somebody else than it is to see it for yourself.
Absolutely. My sister can come and organize my house really, really quickly. And it takes me, I'm just buried every time I try. Yeah. But I can go to her house and I can organize it just fine. I don't know what the problem is. And she's just buried. Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of part of it.
Well, one of the things I'm hearing in my coaching sessions and one of the things I'm seeing in the Facebook group is that newer sellers are highly restricted this year in terms of their opportunities, their options when it comes to selling brands and categories on the platform.
I have not seen anyone be declined from opening a new seller account in Amazon. So I did have that confusion one time this week. It's not that. But you're very limited until you build a little bit of trust with Amazon. You're very limited in the categories and the brands that you're allowed to sell in, because Amazon wants to see that their customers are going to be taken care of, right? They want to make sure that, those little mistakes, you get those out of the way in the small amount of categories and brands that they allow you. Because we really, until we go through it, we don't really know what we don't know. So sometimes we accidentally send something in on the wrong ASIN, or, I didn't realize I didn't package that properly, or, I didn't realize that was the same thing. Many, many little things that you just kind of overcome early on. Amazon knows that's going to happen. They have had a lot of new sellers come on, so they've restricted what you can do. And this Q4, usually Q4 is pretty tight with those restrictions. Yep. This Q4 seems more than others, although I don't have any data to back that up.
I think a couple of things are working in that to make it feel like it's more restrictive this year.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, one of them is the getting rid of non-manufactured multi-packs and variety packs, right? So that definitely is taking some ASINs off the table.
Some of the categories have had some changes there.
Something else that's working, and this is maybe an ancillary or side effect of the fact that Amazon's West Coast warehouses are overflowing right now. They just have no room. They cannot keep up with the amount of inventory that's going in, specifically on the West Coast. And so I think one of the things that they may implement to help alleviate some of that is restrictions for newer sellers.
But it's very possible. Of course, we're guessing here. We don't have any insights there. Yeah. But it seems feasible. And all the warehouses, I can tell you, all the warehouses are very backed up and always are this time of year. Some sellers only sell during Q4.
Yep.
And a lot of sellers sell 3, 4, 5 times as much in Q4. So these warehouses are really, really strained right now. And we as sellers do have to work around that. There's nothing we can do about it. We can get mad.
We can quit.
We can get irritated. We can quit. But that's only going to hurt us, right? Amazon's not going to do anything about it. But, understand what that is. Sometimes that's helpful. So those things, I think you're right, are contributing. But most of it is just that every Q4 is just really, really busy. Every Q4 or just before, there's some sort of
October surprise
cleanup. Yeah, you can call it October surprise. Kind of a cleanup of the catalog. They're always trying to make their catalog better.
Yeah.
And this year's no exception. And so that it affects everyone. But I do have good news because I work with the Kickstart program,
Yes.
silentjim.com/Kickstart, if you want to know about that. I work with them, and our goal in 4 weeks is to find one unit of one ASIN, get it packaged, prepped, and in a shipping plan and sent to Amazon's FBA warehouse. Well, these people are brand new. They open their account during this class or just before, and they have never sent anything in before. So you would think if it were as bad as some people are feeling like, you would think that they wouldn't be able to find anything to send in. But they are. Every week I'm hearing people, we found something we can send in. There are things out there. And part of the problem, I think, is, Brian, that there are, let's say, home and kitchen, right? That's one of the categories that most new sellers are open in. There are, 300 million, hundreds of millions of ASINs listings in that category.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of them are going to be private label. A lot of them are going to be restricted brands. So let's say you can only sell on a quarter of those. Well, I'm not going to do the math, but that's a lot of ASINs still, right? We agree with me there? Okay. So the problem is you kind of have to wade through all those ones that you can't to kind of find your vein. It's almost like a gold mine. You've described this before. You get a vein, and then all of a sudden you can start finding it. But, man, you could dig forever trying to find that vein. Sometimes it seems like forever. So you just got to keep moving forward. Don't stop just before you get there.
One of the things that can be here, pro tip, I guess we'll call it pro tip.
Pro tip. I'm listening.
When you find that brand within a category that you are approved to sell, one of the things that you can do on your Keepa extension is click on the name of the brand and go to the Keepa 360 course. There's a nice little link in there that shows you, a little video that Robin walks you through exactly. So when you find that you are approved for a specific brand in a particular category, click on the link for the brand name, and you'll see all the other listings for that brand.
Yes, in Keepa.
In Keepa. So now you can actually exploit the fact that, okay, I'm approved to sell whatever, brand X, but how do I find more of brand X that I'm already approved to sell? That's a great little golden tip right there. Click on that thing, find out all the listings that are out there with that brand name, and then you can go evaluate all those listings. What are the chances? You're not going to find 50% of those probably that you could sell on, but you can still go through and practice, and B, potentially find some that would be testable for you in that brand.
I'm glad you said that. And I know this is sounding a little cryptic because we don't actually have time or the ability to teach a class on this right now, but the information is in Keepa 360, which you can find.
It's in the beginner section of Keepa 360, which is in the proven,
silentjim.com/360.
There we go. Yep.
So that's how you can find that information and a whole bunch of different ways to use Keepa to help you source. But I'm glad that you talked about the fact I just missed your pro tip. What was it? Goes to the brand.
Go to this. So in the Keepa extension, there's a way you can go to the brand on one of the tabs, click on the brand name, and it'll show you all the rest of the listings that Keepa's tracking.
Right. So, but you do still have to look at each one of them.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you talked about the practice of it, because it's just like any other skill that we are building. You have to practice. When you're first learning to play an instrument, it doesn't sound really good when you're practicing.
Ask your brother and sister.
Ask my brother and sister. They know. They know. And even after you get a little better, it can really grate on people. But apparently, but it's true. It's not going to sound good at first. It's going to feel clunky. You're going to have to look at every, playing the piano. I had to look at every single key and say, okay, is that my thumb or my first finger? How do I, put my fingers on all these different keys? Which fingers do I use? And I have to think through it all the time. When I started playing golf, same thing. My golf teacher showed me like 14 different things that I had to remember. Keep your head down, pull back in this way. And you want to have club come up there and hit the ground and whatever, all this stuff, and keep your head down. And don't forget to keep your head down. That was the thing he kept saying. Yeah. I don't know. He kept saying that. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, don't be afraid to feel a little clunky and have to really go through every step at first. The more you do it, the more that will become normal, natural movement for you, just like anything else. But we can't expect to be as good as a guy who's been doing it for 10 years the first time we do it, even the first couple of months that we do it.
It's a great story because there are a lot of professional golfers. One of them comes to mind right now, who have gone through multiple iterations of creating a golf swing.
But they all say keep your head down, don't they?
Well, yes, I'm sure keep your head down is consistent across all the different types of swings, right? But because there are so many different ways that you can swing a golf club, and the thought process that you have, the mechanics that happen, and
the different swings for different clubs as well.
Sure.
Right? Different situations.
I'm talking about like just golf swing in general.
Okay.
So like Tiger Woods came onto the scene with a particular golf swing. Then he retooled his golf. He got a new golf swing coach, and then he retooled it. And I don't know how many different golf swings he's had over the span of his career. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when you go and you see a coach about this, they throw everything out the window.
Yep.
And they start from the ground up. And I've had a couple of newer coaching clients where this has been the case as well, where they're like, yeah, I'm trying to reboot my business, right? I've done this a year ago, a couple of years ago. I took 6 months off, whatever it was. Now I'm back in the game. And so what I'm doing, I feel like I'm Hank Haney, the golf swing coach. And I'm like, forget everything you know about sourcing on Amazon. I'm going to train you up on this, right? And we're going to and it's going to feel clunky and it's not going to feel right. And it's going to be maybe in direct conflict with some things that you knew in the past or that you exercised in the past. Nonetheless, we're going to start over and you're going to come out of this with a premium golf swing at the end.
Because what? Couple of reasons. One, apparently that what you knew is not working for you, or you wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Things have changed. Things have changed in your abilities. Things have changed in Amazon. Things have changed in the sources.
Yep.
Things have changed, and they change. That's part of business. Things change. If they don't change, they get stagnant, and then they just start going downhill. Who was it that said you can't stay the same in business? You're either moving forward or you're going backward. There's not a stay the same.
Yeah, right. I think that's fair.
So I get the same thing. So the other reason that we want to do a whole new golf swing, using that analogy, is because now you have someone who can see you swinging. So it's not just what it feels like to you. Someone can say, okay, you're doing that, but I don't know if you realize that you're twisting your hips, in a funny way every time you backswing. Well, you didn't know that because you can't see yourself, but your coach can see that and can compare that to 30 other people that they're working with, or however many people they're working with or have worked with, that have a similar golf swing, and they see the difference in years because they look at so many all day long. There are so many values in having a coach take a look at your swing, for instance. Yeah. And sourcing is that such important part of your business.
It's what we typically do when we get a reboot client or just a new client, and someone who's new to Amazon or whatever, is we'll walk them through. I know I beat the heck out of the Karate Kid analogy, but it's because it's so relevant. In the, the wax on, the paint the fence, the sand the floor, do all these things that initially don't make sense, and then go away, practice them, and then come back and then demonstrate for me.
Yes.
Okay, now walk me through what you were thinking here, Chuck.
Let's see
what
if
are
you're
you
close.
Right? Walk me what you were thinking here, Tina. Just explain it to me like I explained it to you, now explain it to me. And then what do we get back?
Well, that way, because I don't need to know what your thought process was. I'm not the one choosing that ASIN for my business. You are. What I need to know as your coach is, are you comfortable and confident in your thought process, or can I give you a few tips where you are going through that process to add and see give you my feedback, right?
What I was going to say
for?
is when they're giving me that feedback, it's my opportunity to help them fine tune that just that much more.
Fine-tune.
Because there's a little bit of walk me through a couple of them. And then I realize, or I'm observing that on a couple of them in a row, we're not doing X.
Yep.
Okay, you're going to get a better result if you do X. Oh yeah, you know what? I forgot about that. Because why? Because I'm not good at it yet.
Right.
So I forgot about, and there are 14 things that we're trying to think. Actually,
I got 13 of them, but
we think about three.
We think about just
three things, but then in front of the 3 things, we do put the pre-flight inspection, and then there's a lot to try and keep in mind while you're going through this. And so it's just a good opportunity for them to come back and I say, now demonstrate for me, and then I can say, great, you nailed it, or we're forgetting about the brand check, or we're forgetting about the break-even point, or whatever it is. And then we slowly get better and better at that.
Sometimes it's just, hey, if you do this first before you do that, then you can save yourself some clicking around or something. Yeah. So a lot of little tips from people who do it all the time and have gotten a lot of tips from the people that they work with. Let me tell you, that's part of it too.
Well, and just to circle back to the original point here about sourcing in Q4, especially if you were a newer seller, there are plenty of ASINs that are still available to you.
Are.
Do you have to maybe look a little bit harder or a little bit longer? Maybe that's true. Search out some store brands. I bet you find some that you can be approved for, and then just
with the simple stuff.
Start with what's available to you, and then the rest will open up to you over time.
Yeah, trust me. You're not going to be selling Nike shoes on your first day. Just not going to happen. You apply to sell it, buy 10 products, whatever. It's probably not going to be approved if you've never sent anything in. So be okay with that. I want to mention something that you said about fine tuning. I always wonder, we have lived a few generations now, or a few decades, I'm sorry. We've lived our generation, which has seen other generations come on the scene.
I think it's fair to say we've lived a few generations. I mean, we had our parents' generation, our grandparents. We didn't live all of it, but we lived
aware
part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And we've seen our children, and now we have grandchildren. The point of that is, I always think about those things that we just say off the cuff but make sense to us. And I wonder if people know where those things come from.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who just always looks at, where does that come from? I don't understand why we say it that way. I do know why we roll up the window, why we say roll up the window, even though it's just a push button these days. We used to actually crank and roll up the window, why we dial the phone. Even though it's not a rotary dial anymore, we used to dial the phone. So you said fine tuning. That has to do with the radio that we used to listen to. It wasn't streaming digital music. It wasn't YouTube. It wasn't, whatever, all those things that we have now. It was an actual over the air radio, right? So how do we fine tune? Where does that come from?
Well, I think it applies to more than just the radio, but in terms of the radio, you'd have in the AM band, you'd have stations would have a designated number on that band. And so there was in the city I grew up in, there was a station, AM station. This was way before FM. It got so popular. 1460 AM. Yes. 1460. Okay, well, in most of AM radios, there was the number spread was 1400, 1500, 1600. So you had 1460 you had to kind of dial it in there, right? And so when you were on the edge, when you were at 1450, you could sort of hear it and it would be sort of staticky. If you're at 1470, maybe you'd hear it and be kind of staticky, kind of going in and out. But then, so what you'd do is there would be a button that you would program on, that you would program. It wasn't a push button. I mean, it wasn't a digital button. It was a push button that would when you pushed it, it would automatically move the dial to the number that you had set it at. Well, what would happen?
Tuning.
That was the tune. But what would happen over time is the ability for that button to go back to the same place would get compromised.
Because it wasn't digital. It wasn't. it was pretty analog. And so
you'd press the button, and then you'd need to modify the tune a little bit. So that would be the fine tuning. Because it would come in at 1470 or 1465, and you need to tune it back a little bit to 1460.
Right. So The analogy is you get in the general area and you find somewhere where, okay, you have some potential, and then you've got to fine tune. And boy, sometimes it took a while. You go too far this way, too far that way. It's so close. Depending on where you are, in comparison to where those airwaves are reaching, it might take, quite a bit of time to fine tune that. Well, that's the way it is when you're learning the skill of sourcing. You got to fine tune it, but only after you get in the general direction that you're planning on going. You got to be able to, hear it with static first, and then you can dial it in. But you're not going to be dialed in the first time you touch it. You're just not. Make sense?
Totally makes sense to me. I love the fine tuning aspect of it. We would do the same thing maybe in the old days when you would work on your own car. Like I remember my dad tuning the carburetor.
Yes.
Or even tuning up the car. You give it a tune up, right? But the fine tuning, especially important in the home stereo system. It had a much
oh yeah, it was a big dial.
Yeah, and it was more sensitive to the touch, and you had it was more of a micro movement as opposed to the macro movement that you would get in the car. But
so now that we know all about old-fashioned radios,
right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's go on to another topic here.
All right.
Another thing that came up this week.
I always shake that camera. I'm so sorry. My foot goes in just the right spot. I'm gonna have to move that. Is
the knowing your numbers, and I do a lot of sessions around knowing your numbers.
You do.
And one of the things that one of the tools I used to use Inventory Lab a lot for this, because I could pull a monthly report and pretty quickly get a good idea of categorize all the expenses and the revenue and all that, and then kind of figure out how we fine tune the things that we're selling to improve your profitability. And most recently, I have started using SellerBoard over the last year or so for these sessions, because SellerBoard has great data points.
Yeah.
And I had a coaching client who I went through let's get SellerBoard connected for you. He was interested in figuring it out. And there's a trial, at least a 30-day free trial out there. So I highly encourage you, if you are selling stuff, it's not a tool you need before you actually have some business happening.
Right. Okay.
There's no sense in getting it today. In fact, I like it almost as after a few months, if you've really been selling some stuff, then plug this in, and then all of a sudden light bulbs will go off for you. And that's exactly what happened to this coaching client. We got it set up. He needed to let some data sync, and so I kind of showed him where to go to look for some things. And the email I got from him the next day was oh, this changed my world. Just being able to log in there on a daily basis and see these data points.
The visibility
of it was not only a game changer in terms of what was visible to me, but it also re-energized him. And he was like, now that I see that I am making money,
yes,
I am making money not only on a individual sale, but I am making money even at the end of the day after I factor in my overhead expenses. Now I'm more motivated to go out and find more things to sell.
Yeah. And can I interrupt here? Yeah. It's kind of like I think of some people have a job, right? And they go to work and they make pretty good money. They bring home this big paycheck, but they still never have any money. Where does that money always go to? Why do I never, ever have any money? This is what it feels like.
It is.
Once you get in a couple months in, you start going, well, I keep sending stuff in and I keep selling stuff, but there's all these places where your money can be. It's being being held by Amazon for a certain amount of time. You have pending orders that haven't been paid out yet. You only get paid once every 2 weeks. So where all that money is can be really frustrating if you don't see it. You don't feel like you're making money. You don't feel like you've made progress.
Well, and that's one of the challenges with the Amazon business. I mean, it's low barrier to entry that we talk about a lot, especially in the replens game, is that anyone can fire up an Amazon account with it. You can be a sole proprietor. You don't have to check a whole bunch of boxes and jump through a bunch of hoops before. So great. It's also pretty inexpensive to get started from a subscription standpoint. And then if you follow the replens model and you're going low, low, high, then it's also super easy to get started. But one of the challenges that a lot of people, I think, don't understand, and we didn't either, to be fair, was the cash flow challenges that you run up against. And so even though you are making money, it doesn't feel like you're making money for a couple of reasons. Number one, you touched on this before, the delay.
Yeah.
The time that it takes to get through a cycle of, spending your money on product to getting fully paid out plus profits on that can be 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer.
And that first, right now in Q4, it gets pretty long. The first few cycles can feel really, really heavy. Now, once you get that pipeline full and get rolling, it comes a lot easier. But those first few cycles can really be tough.
The other thing that makes it feel like you're not making money is that any profits that you're making, you're rolling back into the business. And so when you go shopping, you may or may not realize that you're spending more and more every week. Unless you are making a concerted effort to say, I'm capping my spend at X amount.
Most people are in growth mode during this time.
But if you're in growth mode, you're not capping your spend. Now, we do typically, after we get enough going, and this could be anywhere between 6 and 12 months, like to take a little pause, just plateau, observe, make sure everything comes full circle and you are where you think you are. But one of the benefits of SellerBoard is because it doesn't have to wait 8 weeks to tell you whether you're making profit.
Right. That helps so much when you know what happened yesterday.
Yeah. Right. And that is the part I love the most about SellerBoard is when I pull up my app and I take a look. It's one thing to see the gold bars. Oh yeah. I had an $800 day yesterday. Great.
Right.
How much of that was profit? SellerBoard tells you exactly how much was profit.
Right.
Gross profit and net profit. Now, it's only as good as the information that you are putting into it. So all the information it's getting from Amazon, by the way, all this information is already available on Amazon.
Yes.
But good luck finding it, finding the report, remembering to go back and check it, extracting it, putting it into a readable format, making charts and graphs, do all those things. SellerBoard just does it like that.
That's right. And one other thing that SellerBoard knows, if you tell it, is what your cost of goods was.
Yes.
You never tell that to Amazon. Amazon doesn't care. They don't have a place for you to put that. You're not going to say that to Amazon and keep that in any record. You are going to be able to do that in SellerBoard. That's why we can know what the profits are from SellerBoard, but we really can't know from Amazon, just sales numbers.
Not in as timely a fashion as we would like.
Right. Well, Amazon will never tell us what the difference between.
Oh, right. They'll
tell us what we sold for, and then we have to input that at some point.
Yeah.
You can do that ahead of time in SellerBoard. That's where I was getting with that.
Yes, no, you're right.
Now we've got everybody confused.
My mind wandered a little bit, and that's what happened there. So anyway, SellerBoard, super powerful tool. I'm not even making a cup of coffee by saying it, and I would recommend it anyway. Because it's just so powerful. And
very inexpensive.
By the way, I used to say, the reason, apples to apples, Inventory Lab to SellerBoard, you can't do that comparison.
Because they're meant for two different purposes.
However, SellerBoard is releasing, at least in beta, an inbound shipping workflow.
Well, that's interesting. Well, we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah. So, and then it could be more of an apples to apples comparison.
Cool. Okay. Well, let me say this about tools. And this is a question I have a lot. What tools should I have? What tools would help me do this? The first thing I always want to say about any tool that including Keepa, although we do feel like Keepa is pretty necessary to do replens, make sure that you're getting tools that enhance your process. Don't let the tool decide what your process is going to be.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of tools you can buy and the guy who made that tool is like, oh, I can do this and that and the other thing. But that's not part of the method or the strategy that you have. So there's going to be a lot of things that you can't use and some things that won't be quite what you need. So be very careful when you choose a tool to make sure it's not deciding what your process is, right? You decide that yourself and then add tools to help you. The second thing I want to say about tools is that it seems like we should be able to, find some tool that automates everything for us. And it's just not the case, right? at some point you got to put human eyeballs on that thing and make sure that you're getting what you think you can, because a machine doesn't get into the nuances, and it can really get you in trouble if it's not watching for certain things that you need to watch for. Okay. So tools can be very helpful. Another thing about tools, we were talking about the golf analogy, right? And a swing coach can really help you understand the game, understand what you're doing, whatever. But unless you're, Tiger Woods or someone in that league, a professional golfer, probably buying a special ball that has a certain flight range or something, that's not going to fix your swing, right? So just because I have the best tool in the world doesn't mean that's going to fix my sourcing problem. My sourcing problem has to do with me and my practice and my understanding of the game. Then it will make a difference whether I get the right tool or not, or whether I use the right ball. It'll make a difference. I can tell you, you can buy me the most expensive ball, and that's not going to help my golf game much at all.
I used to say this too, like, oh yeah, I don't know what good a set of ping clubs, a brand new set of golf clubs is going to do for me. Like, golf clubs do not make the difference in my game. I used to say this. I don't agree with that anymore.
Because you got better.
Because I got better at playing the game. But you're right. The ball that I use is not going to make a difference in my game. The little tool I use to clean my golf clubs, not going to make a difference in my game. Right? How cool my golf bag is, not going to make a difference in my game.
Right.
Same thing in the Amazon space with that really slick and shiny repricer. Not going to make a difference in your sourcing game. The SellerBoard, not going to make a difference in your business unless you already have some other stuff going on there.
It's not going to make you profits. It's going to tell you if you made profits.
I think I said this before, but it's like buying QuickBooks, the application, the software, and expecting it to run your business. It does is work on the information that you give it. So you got to have something going on, right? And
you got to know whether that's accurate information or not, right?
So yeah, I agree with you on the whole tools thing. I totally agree.
Well, there we go. So do you have a quote for us today?
I do, but before we get to the quote, I wanted to share some other good news, actually.
Oh, yes.
This week, well, I'll say within the last 10 days or so, I've had 2 coaching clients that I've worked with from fairly early on who have quit their day job.
That's awesome.
Is that awesome?
How great is that to hear?
Yeah.
Congratulations, you guys. You know who you are.
You know
Congratulations.
Who you are. Yes.
We are so happy for you. This is a huge step in confidence and in payoff for the hard work that you've been doing over the last year or so. And I'm just really, really excited for you guys.
And what's interesting is they both have different businesses, totally unique.
Yeah.
They don't look anything like our business.
No.
Their businesses don't look anything like each other's business, and yet they are out there.
They find a way.
Those
who find a way find success.
Yeah.
Find enough success, and you can meet your goals.
Yeah.
So
I like it. Well, that does bring me to the quote then.
All right.
We're reading this book. Love this book, by the way. if you're a fan of the 1 Minute Manager series, we just finished reading The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And this was like just number one, entertaining, and B, useful for some very fundamental things that we all should keep in mind to improve our own productivity, keep our sanity, and really enjoy what it is that we do.
That's right.
And a great quote came out of that book today as we were wrapping it up. Robin found it, and it goes like this: "It's better to strike a straight blow with a crooked stick than to spend my whole life trying to straighten the darn thing out."
Yeah.
And that's Kenneth Blanchard, again, from The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. So, yeah, if you're going to wait to get started until you have a super straight stick, you could wait a long time.
Yeah. If you never swing that stick, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, swing it. Swing it. You can make the stick better over time. You can find a better stick over time.
Right. But swing that first swing.
Yes.
Right?
Like the golf club. It's
like the golf club. Swing the golf club. Oh, you can get better golf clubs later.
Yes. Right. let's work on making sure that you do have a good swing, that you do enjoy doing it, and that you want to keep doing it before you go investing a bunch of money in something that may or may not make a difference in your business.
The fundamentals are the fundamentals, no matter how long you've been doing it. The fundamentals are still important.
That's right.
All right. Well, when we are not knowing how much profit we're making, and we can't get our shipments in, and everything's a little slow, what cures it?
Test more ASINs.
Let's go test some more ASINs.
All right, let's go test some more ASINs.
It makes you feel better about everything. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Talk to you soon.
We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, before we let you go, we've got a special segment that we do here once per week or so with our good friend Jeff Schick from jeffschick.com. He's a legal and policy expert for Amazon, Walmart, and all things e-commerce. And if you would like to get in touch with him, you can check out the link in the show notes. Jeff, thanks so much for being here today. What do you got for us?
All right. So what we're going to do is talking about best practices for having VAs and other people with access to the account. So one of the things we've been seeing with Section 3 supply chain audits with Amazon is that a lot of times they're asking for sellers to validate anybody who had access to their accounts. They want to know who this person is and why. So like, for instance, sellers who have us going in doing reimbursements and account health management, they've been asking for copies of our engagement letter. Now, luckily for our clients, we use our own domain, jeffschick.com. So it's very easy to tie the Seller Central login to us because it's SC1 at jeffschick.com or SC5 or whatever it may be. And it's easy for Amazon to be like, okay, engagement letters from jeffschick.com, company's called Jeff Schick Legal, username is at jeffschick.com. All right, this all checks out. And so they can clear that red flag pretty quickly. But where things get a little bit more interesting is when sellers have VAs or prep centers that don't use domains and don't like business domains, I should say. So one of the big things that we're recommending for sellers is that anyone that has access to your account, you want to have two things in place. One is that you want to have an agreement with a signed agreement. DocuSigned is perfectly fine. It doesn't need to be paper signed. It doesn't need to be notarized or anything like that. But a DocuSigned agreement that says, this is who I'm giving access to. So I'm giving access to Jimmy Smith. Jimmy's email address that he's using to access my account is this email address. And this is the functions he'll be performing. Something very basic, but that it just explains why this person has access. And you should have that signed before you give them access. So if Amazon asks later on, it's not backdated. It's real. You can show the paper trail that it was actually signed by both parties and that it's legitimate. That also protects you against related account issues in the future too, because then you can show that this is why you were related to some other account because of this one person. Mm-hmm. Now, the other aspect I mentioned was domains. So if you're using a prep center, I'd strongly encourage you to make sure that their domain is like a professional business domain. So, XY, prep center login at prepcenter.com or, like whatever their nomenclature is, but it should ideally tie back to like prepcenter.com. Now for VAs, that gets a little bit more interesting. I'm a huge advocate when it comes to VAs for having them on your own email server. And so there's two reasons why for that. One is that you have access to their inbox so that any purchases they've made, you've got access to. We've actually had sellers before where they terminated their VA and the VA changed the Gmail password. And then the seller didn't have access to the Gmail account and couldn't get the order confirmations that they needed or the order histories. And they couldn't log into the websites at, wherever they'd bought OA stuff from because that password was changed. Wow. So if they'd had their own email server, like for instance, our company on Amazon was called Pet Shampoo World. So we had petshampooworld.com. So if we'd had a VA, we could have had, Lewis at petshampooworld.com and had his inbox. So with all his order confirmations. The other aspect of it too is that now when we're giving Seller Central access, if we are granting it only to people within our domain, it makes it really easy to explain to Amazon, hey, this was an employee of ours. His email address was Lewis at petshampooworld.com. He was logged in, our company is Pet Shampoo World. You see that in our store name, so then for the Amazon person, it all checks out. And if you have that agreement signed too, that says, hi, this is Lewis. He's, a VA, he's doing sourcing. Here's his login to Seller Central. It all checks out so that in the future, they don't have any red flags. Where the red flags form is when sellers have, lewis.petshampooworld1@gmail.com. That starts to get a little bit wonky. And if Lewis got mad at me and changes that email, that password, like I said, now we don't have access to lewis.petshampooworld@gmail. And that becomes even more problematic for all the data that's within it. So domains are pretty cheap this day and age. You can get one on GoDaddy for about $20 a year. Email hosting can be like $5 a month for Office 365 if you want the basic plan, or $12.50 a month per person for the more full featured, Microsoft Word and Office suites. I think it's just money well spent on the business to have that, so that way it just makes things cleaner with Amazon. So
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if the extra $5 to $15 per month for an email address per person protects your account, then it's definitely worth doing that if it gives you a little bit extra layer of protection of, some documentation for Amazon there. So that's interesting. It's definitely something, especially with all the VA services and stuff that exist out there. What do you recommend that people do that are using VA services that maybe they don't have these agreements in place, or maybe the VAs that they're using are just using a Gmail? How do you recommend they reach out to the company to get that stuff from them now?
So I'd say if you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm not doing any of this stuff, it's never too late to start, because you can always start, today. When it's too late to start is when Amazon's got a problem. So like, for instance, we had a seller, she had a VA in Pakistan. She got suspended on Amazon, so she immediately let him go to save money. Well, now he won't communicate with her. And so the documents that we need from him to sign that prove that he was doing VA work and to prove why he was accessing her account, he doesn't want to respond back to, because he doesn't work for her anymore. So, and he's upset that she let him go with pretty much no notice because she was shut down by Amazon and she thought that was the best thing to do for her business. So that being said, I'd say the time to fix it is now, when you're not having a problem, because you could just simply say to your VA, hey, I just listened to this podcast. I'm going to change you onto the email address. Here's your new email address and login. Here's your new Seller Central login. We're going to discontinue your other Seller Central login at the end of this week. And I'd also appreciate if you can DocuSign this document that just shows that you work for me, so I've got something in my records. Boom. Easy to have. It's done. And that's it,
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I think that's something that is actionable for everybody that has a VA right now. Maybe start looking to get that domain, get them that email address, and get that document signed, because it's going to be a huge help. Even just peace of mind that that you've got things done properly with your business. Yeah. So, Jeff, thanks so much for being here this week. Looking forward to next week, and we'll see you then.
Thank you. Appreciate it.